We have a trade. The Pacers made their move. We'll break it all down in the instant reaction right here, right now. Pacers and Bucks are making a deal. Jordan Nwora, the big piece coming to the Pacers, as well as George Hill and Serge Ibaka. Pacers are going to have to waive some players. We'll break it all down really quickly and get to more analysis tomorrow here today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another short breaking news edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we're diving in. Deadline just ended about 2 hours ago. It's a little before 5 p.m. here on Thursday the 9th, and the Pacers did their thing. They made their long-term-ish move. They acquired some assets. They used their cap space. They got a forward. All the littler things that were to be expected if they were to make a move. None of the big splashy stuff that some fans are hoping for. Instead, sticking with the little addition moves in one trade with the Bucks. And I waited until we got some reporting or confirmation on this. Dustin Dopirak of the Indy Star is the one who got it out there, saying that the only move the only moves the Pacers make today is a deal with the Bucks and those connected moves. So let's talk about what the Pacers did. And we have to get some background here because the Kevin Durant trade is sort of the impetus for this. Kevin Durant to the Suns sent Jay Crowder to the Nets. And then because of that, now Jay Crowder could more easily be traded to the Bucks. And because Jay Crowder could go to the Bucks had to send out matching salary in that trade. But the Nets don't want any of that crap from the Bucks. They don't want to up their tax bill for some of these guys. And so the Pacers get involved and they get picks and assets. So here's what we know right now. On tomorrow's show, or as soon as possible, we'll report more details as they leak in. The first reported thing that we got was from Shams Charania of The Athletic that Jordan Nwora is headed to the Indiana Pacers. If you don't remember him, some of you might because he played at Louisville. 6'8" forward, has been with the Bucks for all 3 years of his career, won a title with them in 2021. The big thing for the Pacers here, he's 6'8". They don't have anybody at that size, so he could squeeze into their rotation on the back end just because of that, right? They have no one who can do that. A guy who can play the 3 and the 4, a la O'Shea Brissett, seems somewhat valuable for the Pacers to have on their team. And then the big thing skill-wise for Nwora, who is their biggest trade deadline addition. For his career, 37.6% from 3, almost 40% this year on 3 attempts per game. He's taking 3 per game for his career. He shot 45.2% from deep as a rookie, has played in over 130 games, right? So has mostly established himself. Now he has some weaknesses in his game, certainly. The Pacers got him and extra stuff for what amounts to, we'll see. But at the rim, not a great finisher, not much of a mid-range game, but can kind of put the ball on the floor and can definitely shoot it well. And Rick Carlisle likes shooters. The Pacers need forwards badly. His defense is okay. That's a nice piece to try for the Pacers. And the other part of this that matters is he's 24, right? That's a big deal for a Pacers team. That's in whatever stage of a rebuild you want to call it. He's only under contract for 1 more year beyond this year, so not very long, and he's unrestricted free agent at the end of that deal. So the Pacers don't have a ton of team control, but doesn't sound like, we don't know yet, they gave up much of value to make this happen. So Jordan Nwora, the biggest, air quotes, addition for the Pacers at this deadline. And I'll be curious to see where he can fit in, right? A decent player who has contributed on a very good Bucks team, right? Has played in over half of their games in the last 2 seasons, has played in many of their games this year, 38 of them, besides his own injury, right? They signed him to a 2-year deal because they wanted to keep him in the offseason. If the Bucks want to keep him, he's certainly someone valuable. And given where the Pacers are, he almost makes more sense for them than the Bucks. He's a good scorer in college, right? So tapping into all that potential, figuring out where he can help will be a big thing for the Pacers down the stretch of this season. And certainly the shooting and the size, I think, will make him a natural fit with the Pacers in some way. TBD on what his role will be or when he'll actually join the team when the trade becomes finalized. This could go a number of ways, right? Because the KD trade sort of launched all this into motion. Maybe this ends up being like a 4-team deal. And in a 4-team deal, People have to touch everybody in the trade. So the Pacers have to send something to the Suns and to the Bucks and to the Nets. And we'll talk a little bit more about all the complications in a second. I am just guessing at this point. I've contacted some people. I did some source reporting today, but everybody's on the phones with other teams today. They don't have time for reporters. And they shouldn't have time for reporters today. They've got work to do if you work in the league. So that's the big addition. That's not the only thing that happened, though. ESPN, Woj was the first on this one. The second player coming to the Pacers as a part of this trade is George Hill. Now let's back up and say the second player coming to the Pacers. Well, the Bucks, to get Jay Crowder, had to send out a certain amount of salary to salary match, right? They can't just take him in. So they had to send out something. Nwora was not enough, and we'll get to another player, but that second player also is not enough. So Hill is also involved as from a salary perspective. He's on the books for $4 million this season. Woj's tweet suggests that the Pacers are getting George Hill and a second-round pick with him. So it's TBD on a problem with the reporting coming in piecemeal like this, and with this deal being pretty large and complicated, is that Nwora was reportedly coming to Indiana with 2 second-rounders. That was Shams Charania. George Hill was reported with a second. Is it Nwora and Hill in 3 seconds? Is it 2 seconds and one of those is a crossover? It's too early to say, but the Pacers got at least 2 seconds as well as Hill and Nwora in this trade. Hill, obviously, many Pacers fans know who he is. He spent many seasons with the franchise, still has Indiana in his name on Twitter. He's Indiana George Hill, which I think is so endearing and funny. Can be a useful piece at guard. I'm not sure he'll be in the Pacers rotation at all. Doesn't make any sense for him to play over any guard that they have out there. He's worse than McConnell, Mathurin, Hield, Halliburton, obviously, Nesmith, Duarte. I would play all those guys over George Hill, but a good vet to have. He's on an expiring deal, so it doesn't have any long-term cap impacts. Could be a buyout candidate, but again, he's from here. He has ties to the city. Maybe he wants to stick around for the rest of the season. TBD on, again, if he gets any minutes, if he has any role in this team, but a fine vet to add to the mix. And if they get a pick to take on $4 million, that's a good deal. That's not much money to take on. Pacers using their cap space productively. And Woj did report that the Pacers are taking him into space, so they don't have to send any matching salary out. They have to send, again, something to the Bucks in some way. It can be a top 55 protected second rounder. It can be cash. It can be draft rights to a player that might never come to the NBA. We'll see. Again, when all the details come out, we'll have him here on Locked On Pacers. And I should add at this point, I'm too far in, Derek Kramer, a.k.a. iPacers blog, will be joining tonight's show to kind of big picture break all this down and see where the Pacers are headed. But George Hill to the Pacers is number 2. Again, TBD if he'll stick with the team long term through the rest of the season, whatever. Scott Agnes over on Fieldhouse Files did report, and by report I mean reply to someone on Twitter who said to him, Pacers holding on to George Hill. He said, indeed. So in that case, George Hill could remain with this franchise. So we'll see what exactly happens with Hill and if he stays. But that's player 2 involved here. Player 3 involved is Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka hasn't played for the Bucks in a while. There's been reporting that the Bucks and Ibaka were working on a trade because he wasn't playing there. I think he's played in 16 games for Milwaukee this season. And he also is headed to Indiana in this trade. That's the third player. That made all the salary matching make sense from a Nets and Bucks perspective. And the Nets don't want these guys. They're in the tax. They don't want to pay tax money for them. So over to Indiana you go. They have space to take them in. You get salary. You get draft picks. You get Nwora to do it. And then Shams Charania reported about an hour after the deadline that Serge Ibaka will be waived by the Pacers. So he will not actually step in and play for the Pacers franchise. He's just in it as kind of salary ballast to make it all happen. So what we know of for sure in some capacity is Jordan Nwora, George Hill, and Serge Ibaka were traded to the Pacers. Serge Ibaka is going to be waived by the Pacers, and the Pacers will get at least 2 second-round picks in all this. What we don't know yet is what is getting shipped out and how exactly the Pacers are going to facilitate this deal. I think that is segment 2 here to get you guys through this instant reaction, what's going on. But I think Nwora is a valuable little flyer for the Pacers to take on. If he's nothing, they didn't really give up anything. They get another vet in this. They use their space to get some second rounders, which people all day have said, it's just second rounders. Who cares? Well, if you were keeping up with trades around the NBA, second rounders were amazingly valuable around the NBA today. Second rounders got the Pistons, James Wiseman. It got the Hawks, Sadiq Bey. I mean, they were flying around in a valuable way in the NBA. I think like 40-something second rounders were exchanged. You can't say both that they have no value and then watch other teams use them in other trades. So lots to talk about with second rounders. But what do the Pacers have to do to actually make this happen? What could happen for them? A lot of kind of guessing predictions coming up in the next segment, but important context to see how this deal could be structured. Really quickly, though, let me talk to you guys about FanDuel. Are really excited to tell you about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sportsbook in America. That's FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. There's a lot of fun bets like if anyone on the Eagles particularly scores, A.J. Brown could be a fun one. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app is a safe way to do that. It's secure. It's super easy to use. And best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. Join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Please hop on over to Locked On Bucks to hear Kane Pittman's side of this Bucks deal, although they have a lot more going on than just their trade with the Pacers. So, thinking about this big picture, right? I don't know this, but I'm going to assume for a second. Even if this isn't looped in with the Kevin Durant trade to the Suns, it probably has to be a three-team trade with at least the Nets and Bucks, just because Jay Crowder is involved and all this stuff getting moved. So the reason that this is a complex trade, and people keep asking me, what's going on? What's the deal? What's my reaction? Who's going where? The reason it's kind of complex is if the Suns aren't involved either way, every other team kind of in this loop for the Pacers is a tax team. The Nets are in the luxury tax, the Bucks are in the luxury tax, and the Suns are in the luxury tax. So they don't want to just take stuff from the Pacers. It would cost them a ton of money to just like take a contract from the Pacers and cut that guy to facilitate this trade. They don't want to do that. And the Pacers have space. They're way under the line. This is not reporting. This is me sort of just guessing how teams are operating right now. And so thinking about what that means is the guys didn't want to take whatever end of bench Pacers guys it would take to actually make this trade possible, because the Pacers are taking in 3 players from the Bucks. They have to send out 3 players themselves. And so the first one we got right after it was announced that, or reported, that Nwora would be coming to Indiana, Shams Charania reported Goga Bitadze would be waived. That one was the first one. That one made the most sense, I think, of every player on the Pacers. He's the bench big that is buried the most. He has the least likely guy to have a future with the franchise. He doesn't play now. There's no path to minutes for him at the 5. His contract is expiring. Let him go. He still gets his money. He can explore now other options domestically or internationally, and he can figure it out from there. I think that makes a lot of sense for him to be the first waiver. Pacers still have to eat his salary for the rest of the season, but clearing the roster spot, let them bring in Nwora. So that was the first one that would happen. Now, there's always some weird ways these can dance around in like a non-simultaneous trade where you get a guy and then cut him and they it's all weird. So I wasn't sure exactly what the situation would be if the Pacers would need to cut a bunch more guys or whatever. But then after Jake Fisher reported, I did some digging. Terry Taylor, per a source, will also be waived by the Pacers. He already retweeted a tweet and liked a bunch more about people thanking him for his time with the franchise. So I believe that's all but confirmed at this stage. He, like Goga, could not get on the court this year. He had a nice stint for the Pacers in mid-January when they were looking for solutions with Halliburton out, but they went right back to O'Shea Brissett, and they have, even at the 4 spot with Nesmith and O'Shea and whatever bigs they end up playing at the 4, sometimes they just don't have minutes for a guy like Terry Taylor. They send him down to the G League on assignment this week. They need roster spots, and he seemed like, as an expiring guy, him and Goga both actually expiring guys, the next most likely guy to go, and thus he will go. Now, here is where what I know stops and what everybody knows stops. So, no TBD on who the third player is, or if a third one is even required, right? It could end up being like separate trades, which is hard to explain, but also simultaneous trades where like one guy goes to one team and then the Pacers waive Ibaka, and then that guy comes to the Pacers in a separate deal. It's all kind of stupid and confusing to explain how these trades work. And so it could end up the Pacers don't have to waive anyone else. Now, the other factor here is just pretend. I'm not reporting this. I'm not guessing this. I'm just saying just pretend James Johnson is the third guy who has to get waived. What the Pacers could do is waive James Johnson, get Serge Ibaka in the trade, waive Serge Ibaka, and then immediately sign James Johnson back to their team. James Johnson now would get paid his old contract and his new one at the same time. You know, everybody would be on board for that in theory. So there's a lot of ways for this still to be sorted out, and especially because If it's a 4-team trade, the Pacers have to send something to the other 3 teams. If it's a 3-team trade, the Pacers have to send something to the other 2 teams, right? They have draft rights they can trade. They have all their cash. They have some future seconds, whatever. But either way, this isn't that's kind of like a buried topic here. The Pacers are already kind of helping the Bucks trim some money to get Crowder here, or really, I guess they're helping the Nets. So they would get the stuff. That's why they're getting at least 2 seconds, maybe 3. It's not like they owe any of those teams anything along the way, unless Nwora has like a ton of positive value to them or something. So I don't think it'll be anything significant, but those are the dominoes you can expect to hear later today, early tomorrow, whatever is. Where's the rest of this stuff going? What else is being swapped to make this possible? Because even if the Pacers are just keeping Nwora and cutting Bitadze, or they're keeping Hill on top of Taylor as well, they still have a third player in the mix to figure out what exactly is going on. So there's still some TBD details about this Pacers trade deadline, but in general, as reported from Dustin, the only trade they make is with the Bucks directly, and it's looking like it's going to be looped into a bigger deal. So that's where the Pacers stand right now and what the situation is, who has been moved, and as it stands, if this is the guys the Pacers bring in, right, about $3.8 million of Nwora, a minimum, and about $4 million of George Hill. They did it. They used most of their space to bring in some second rounders, getting a guy who could potentially play for you in your rotation for the rest of the season, another guy to evaluate as a potential piece of your core as a 24-year-old, and a forward, a power forward, a position that they desperately need. Yes, it's not the sexy things. It's not the big names that everybody's been asking about for months and months and months, but it is pretty much exactly what could have been expected as a quiet but effective trade deadline for the Pacers, to get assets, to get a player who helps them, and in theory, this is my prediction, to give up extremely little to do it. So I think it was a pretty good, savvy move for the Pacers to jump in on this. Kevin Pritchard jumping in on these bigger team deals and extracting value where he can is something he's done in the past with the Victor Oladipo trade, for example. So we'll see where the pieces ultimately end up. My opinion could change a little bit if the Pacers give up maybe more than I thought, or if there's something else involved, or if they make a waiver that doesn't make sense to me. But as of right now, I think this is a small but savvy move by the Pacers that could turn out to give them a rotation player, along with assets. And second-round picks were very valuable at the deadline today. That's probably the story of the day. So we'll see where this shakes out. We'll, of course, have more for you coming on Locked On Pacers. Like I said, iPacers blog, a.k.a. Derek Kramer, will join me for a full episode for our Friday show, breaking down the whole Pacers deadline and what went on and what the new look team is. Till then, everybody, hope this helps you. If you have any questions, I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA. I'll be writing and talking all night. So I'll try to be on my phone as much to respond when I can. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you soon.